Good morning, everybody, and welcome back to my podcast on sacred relationships. Today, we're looking at relationship as a spiritual practice. A lot of times when we think about finding the love of our life, we think of it as a place to shelter. Once I meet that person, life will be better. I'll feel better about myself. There's all these ideas that go into the idea of finally ending up with that person. I will have arrived. The problem is that when we don't look on relationship as a spiritual practice, that's when we can end up really struggling, because when you're living on your own, it's easier to hide from your flaws. It's easier not to see things because you don't have somebody else every day to interact with. And that means on your bad days as well as your good days. So when we're first out there dating and we're, showing the best we can offer somebody, that there's a certain blind spot that can occur there. But over time, when you're living day to day with somebody, you're going to have those moments where you struggle. You're going to have times when your partner is struggling with something. And you're either going to look on that as, yeah, that's what I'm here for. I'm here for everything. I'm here for all the stuff relationship entails, or you're going to say that this is not what I signed up for. This is not what I was looking for. And I think a lot of times what could end up being a deeply committed, deeply bonded relationship falls apart because we don't get that going into that relationship is an opportunity to deepen our awareness of ourselves and to really work on becoming the best, most aware people we can be. And awareness isn't picky. It's, no, I've got to be able to look at everything. I have to be able to look at everything about myself, everything about my partner, and accept it unconditionally. And that doesn't mean there aren't discussions where you work through things and you recognize when maybe you have a behavior that negatively affects your partner and it's something you need to work on. But it comes from a place of where we both committed to being together and to working on these things. And we're not going to step away or shut down when it becomes uncomfortable or inconvenient for us. Spiritual practice, whether that's prayer, meditation, attending a service of some kind, that too is not a place to shelter from yourself. Sometimes people think I can just pray that away. I believe a deep spiritual practice means being willing to unflinchingly sit with yourself, turn inward, and look at all of who you are, including your shadow, including the parts of yourself you don't want to see. And it's really uncomfortable, potentially even ego-shattering, to have the person who loves you say, I'm having a problem with this. This is something I'd like us to work on. And you realize, oh, I've got work to do. I'm not perfect in their eyes. I might be perfect for them, but I have things I need to work on. In any spiritual practice, we have to set aside the ego. We have to set aside our precious bubble of beliefs we want to hold about ourselves. We have to be willing to look at the darkness, at the nitty-gritty stuff within us. The beauty of a deep relationship is things are going to get pointed out to you, whether it's your partner saying something or whether you just see it in relation to something that's going on. You get to see your impatience. If you have a temper, you get to see your temper. You get to see those things about yourself that you may not have even realized you needed to work on. You're going to see your core patterns, whatever you grew up with in early childhood that made you say, on a subconscious level, this is what a committed relationship looks like. It's probably going to come up in your relationship, and you're going to see whether those patterns work for you or not. So if you grew up with dysfunction, chances are, if you're not consciously working on that, it's going to show up at some point in your relationship. You're going to realize that some old belief doesn't hold true with your partner. or a way that your family did things doesn't work in your relationship. It's as though really what you're doing is reinventing relationship when you go, no, I'm going to look at the person I'm with, and I'm going to work on what works for us. And that's probably not going to look like what I grew up with, because you both come from different storylines, different experiences. You're going to bring different perspectives into the relationship, and you're either going to talk about it from a point of view of let's look at our differing perspectives and find a way to find common ground, or you're going to try to control for how you're perceived by your partner, how they perceive the relationship. And that's one of the number one things you're going to see in relationship is when you're wanting to establish some form of control over a situation. And really, spiritual practice is about surrender. So when we're in that highest state of loving regard for our partner and loving regard for ourselves, cutting ourselves some slack and realizing we're still learning and that's okay, then we let go of trying to control for how we're perceived. We let go of trying to control what's happening with our partner. And we allow that inner wisdom to work through us. When relationship is a spiritual practice for you, you're wanting to come from your highest. You're wanting to be your best. And that's a pretty egoless journey. It's not about pride and look at what I've achieved. It's much more about the humility of how can I best serve in this situation? What is really called for? What is needed in this moment? And can I let go of trying to grasp at something for myself that's based on fear and limiting beliefs? And can I trust this situation? Can I trust that this relationship is part of the spiritual journey? And if I'm doing the things that take me to the highest level of development of myself, the universe is going to support that. And my partner is going to support that. It's really getting up every morning and looking in the mirror your partner holds up for you. You know, how are they responding to me in this moment? Are we feeling connected? If there's a disconnect, what's my part in that? Do I need to look at maybe I'm being introspective in this moment and they're needing me to reach out of myself and offer something? It's an interesting thing because when you're just on your own spiritual journey, and I spent many years living on my own and doing that deep internal work on my own, there's so much introspection in that. There's so much looking within and looking at your patterns that I could spend hours, days if I wanted to, with very little interaction with others while I went into that sort of cave inside myself and sat in there. It's a bit of a balancing act when you have a partner. There's going to be times you're going to want time for contemplation, but it can be really that setting aside the ego if instead you're responding to the moment. In this moment, does my partner need connection? Or in this moment, does my partner need time for contemplation, and any pull for connection with them doesn't serve them? And I get to sit with what is it bringing up for me if in that moment I want connection and they need to do something for themselves or sit on their own. It's learning to read a situation and respond to it in the moment. And that's really a really profound and beautiful spiritual practice. So much of our society is geared toward what happened in the past and what's going to happen in the future. And how do I control for where things are going? Instead of what's going on in this moment and how can I respond to it? If you think of it as we are constantly responding to stimuli in our environment. And I've talked about this before, the idea of finding space between stimulus and response so that we're not just reacting, but we're responding in a way that is informed by our inner wisdom. And that sometimes means we need to sit for a little bit and contemplate, how is my pattern wanting to react in this moment? And is that appropriate? Because remember, your patterned response is unconscious and usually based on the earlier part of your life. So it's often not relevant or effective in this moment. So a huge part of your spiritual practice that I find is the most effective is to be really present in this moment and be able to sit and contemplate your urges. What is my go-to reaction in this situation? Be able to observe that feeling without acting it out, and sitting with it until it settles down and you can feel into a kinder, gentler, more evolved way to respond. So we often think of meditation as, you go off, you sit somewhere, you meditate, and you come back into the hustle and bustle of life. But really, life can be your meditation. What is being asked of me in this moment? How do my patterns want to respond? And what's the response if I sit and operate from my inner wisdom? What's my highest response in this situation? Just giving yourself some time between the stimulus that's causing you to want to react and how you actually respond can really be the most effective approach to your spirituality. So instead of going, wow, I'm really stressed right now and I can't wait till I can go off somewhere and meditate, and then you're missing the point of meditation, which is to be present with what is in the moment. True meditation is allowing yourself to experience everything life throws at you, not blocking the feelings that are coming up, but contemplating them, so that when you do respond, it's coming from a balanced place. It's coming from a perspective that takes in everything, not just our own limiting beliefs and ideas about maybe how we think we should be treated or how the world we think should be, but looking at the bigger picture. What is called for in this moment for everybody? And that doesn't mean you don't speak your truth, but you speak it from a point of view of recognizing other people are involved, maybe your partner, maybe other people, maybe friends, family. How do you respond in a way that takes into account the entire scenario and not just our limiting beliefs? Because a lot of times what causes us suffering is we rail against what is. I think I should be treated this way. I think life should give me this. I think this person should respond the way I would respond. And how often do we see that where we go, wow, that person was just rude. Like, I wouldn't have done that. I would have done this. But we don't know what their life journey has been. We don't know what's informing their decisions. A lot of times our perspective is one thing. Their actual experience and the reason they're doing what they're doing is another. So to get the bigger picture, we move beyond our ideas of what we think should be happening. We look at, well, what is actually happening? And if we look deep enough, we might even see what's informing somebody else's behavior. Oh, wow, they're actually really stressed right now. Something's upsetting them. They forgot about us meeting for lunch today because something else is going on with them. There's a reason that slipped their mind. And then we can reach out and say, I know we were supposed to meet for lunch today. Something happened. Is there something going on with you that you weren't able to make it? And maybe it did just slip their mind, but it also creates an opening for them to go, well, yeah, this thing happened and it totally threw me off my day and I'm struggling with this. And now you can offer support. So that egolessness, that willingness to see the big picture, that willingness to operate from a higher perspective is what makes relationship a spiritual practice. So I invite you in your day-to-day interaction, whether it's with a partner, a child, a parent, a friend, your boss, coworkers, you do your best to take a deep breath when you're feeling triggered and check in. What does my pattern want to do in this situation? Is that the most effective, highest way I can respond? Can I sit with these jumbled feelings I'm having, these urges to act a certain way, and observe those, while also saying, what's the highest perspective here? What is going on in general in this situation? And what is the more effective way I could respond? And then later, when you have time, sit with the trigger, sit with those feelings, go deep into that. Where do these feelings originally come from? And then do that inner work with your inner child. This is not about ignoring that work. It's recognizing there's a time and a place for it. I hope you found that effective and valuable for you today. I look forward to seeing you next time. Thanks very much.